Kenko Hacks, a podcast about wellness, health, and biohacking.
Today I'm very excited to be speaking to one of the world's really top experts in this area of mushrooms, which is so natural to me. So if I may introduce you a little bit. So during the last few years, mushrooms have become very popular among health enthusiasts around the world. As someone coming from Japan, where a wide variety of edible mushrooms are a quintessential part of our food culture, I find the current interest in mushrooms a great opportunity for me to learn more about the amazing health benefits of mushrooms beyond their culinary properties. And I'm truly excited to be speaking to you, Jeff, today. You are founder and CEO of Namex, the first company to offer certified organic mushrooms to the supplement companies in the US. And as I understand, Namex is a B2B side of your business, and you also have a B2C platform that is called Real Mushrooms, where
Correct.
consumers can shop mushroom supplements using your mushroom extract directly from your website. And
Yes.
your interest in mushrooms goes way back, and you studied ethnomycology at the University of Washington in the 1960s, and you started working on a commercial mushroom farm in the early 70s. So I'm truly honored to be speaking to such an expert in this area today. So thank you so much for speaking to us today, and welcome to the show.
Ava, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and speak with you.
Thank you. During the recent years, mushrooms have become really very popular as a healthy supplement. But given your long time involvement in the mushroom business, I cannot think of a better qualified person really to ask the question, what exactly make mushrooms so healthy?
Well, there are a number of compounds in mushrooms that make them beneficial from an edible standpoint. Mushrooms are mostly carbohydrate, but those carbohydrates are very different. They're not starch. Mushrooms do not have starch like most plants. So they have specific carbohydrates that are very slow acting carbohydrates. One of those is called mannitol. The other is a carbohydrate called trehalose. And the other thing about mushrooms is they're very, very high in fiber. So we're getting that fiber part, and they're actually acting as a prebiotic as well. So
Right.
in terms of being a excellent food, they have those properties, but they also have a compound in their cell walls called beta-glucan. And beta-glucan makes up part of the fiber. And beta-glucans are where all of the research has been focused because they have immunological benefits for us. So that's what I love about mushrooms is that they're not only a great food, but they're food as medicine. And Ava, that's kind of what we want in our diet, right? We want our diet to give us not only beneficial nutrients, but if they could also help us in a different way, like enhancing our immune systems. So for me, mushrooms are kind of like the perfect food. And you have been so lucky to have been raised in Japan where they appreciate and eat so many different species of
Yes, we
mushrooms.
do.
It is just Wonderful. You know, what is so interesting to me too is that many of the mushrooms that we eat, we call them by their Japanese name.
Yes.
Shitake, maitake. It is inokitake.
Yeah.
So, you know, Japan to some degree has really set the standard for mushroom consumption, and that is where all of the real serious major mushroom research has come from.
I can easily imagine that the mushrooms really are, especially shiitake, which is the most common mushroom in Japan. They are eaten in both dried and raw, fresh forms.
Yes.
And I think almost every household has so dried shiitake. Dried shiitake is used to make a bouillon. So it's like
Yes.
we are crazy about bone broth in among health enthusiasts. But in
Yes.
Japan, it's shiitake or maybe some seaweed, which we make
Yes.
broth with. So it's really heavily integrated. It's very basic part of our culinary culture. And I think that an average Japanese person in a format of maybe dried shiitake or fresh other kind of maitake or form, we eat quite a lot of fresh mushrooms every day. Maybe 50 grams I have seen somewhere on average.
Well, you know what? I recommend to everybody I talk to put mushrooms into their diet. I call them the forgotten food, the missing dietary link. And there are so many studies out there that show that they will enhance longevity. And the one mushroom that I recommend to everybody is shiitake. That, for me, it's my favorite mushroom. It is absolutely delicious. And you know, one of the things about dried shiitake is, first of all, there is a season. It grows seasonally, so you can't necessarily get it fresh year round. Possibly in Japan, the seasons are longer because they grow in the spring and the fall. But they say too that when shiitake is dried, the flavor is stronger.
Yes.
So even the dried shiitake is just wonderful. But again, I tell people, put it into your diet. I can sit down and eat 100 grams of fresh mushrooms without even blinking.
I have watched a couple of your previous interviews, and one thing which stuck out for me really was your passion for eating mushrooms. I think
Oh,
I heard you praising mushrooms like as edible mushrooms even before considering to supplement with mushroom extract, which is quite a big statement, given your position at your company. But I totally agree that it is, as someone coming from Japan, it's such a natural part of our culinary culture, and its health benefits are to a certain degree well known. For example, my mom, I remember from my childhood, she used to cook dried shiitake, many of them. Basically, she was making her own shiitake extract, so she will cook them for many hours and chill them in the fridge, and she will drink it every day, and she said it will be good to lower your blood cholesterol, obviously
that's
the LDL.
absolutely correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
and those kind of basic knowledge is, I think it's quite common, well known among average Japanese population. But beta glucan is very interesting, isn't it? Because so many people are, it's something maybe many people recognize. We also mentioned beta glucan is found in all sort of the mushrooms. And would you maybe like to share a little bit more about what beta glucan is and what it is good for?
Sure, sure. Well, you know, what's really interesting about the beta glucans is that we actually have receptor sites in our intestines for beta glucans, so for fungal matter. So those beta glucans, when we consume mushrooms or even the mushroom supplements, the beta glucans will link hit those receptor sites, and they will stimulate the production of immune cells. Now, what's interesting about beta-glucans and mushrooms in general is that they're sitting in the background. They're actually there when we need them, and they're providing us with benefits just all the time, but they will potentiate our immune system. So if there is some type of challenge to our health, from microbial or otherwise, the beta glucans are there ready to start to accelerate and potentiate the production of these immune cells. So, because look, when you're taking a mushroom supplement, it's not like taking an aspirin or an IBU or something like that. You have to think about it kind of like taking vitamins. That it's there, and you don't say, oh, I just took that capsule of vitamin D, and a couple hours later, man, I feel so much better. That's
You don't
not
say that.
how
No.
that's not how it works.
No.
And I do read some reviews from people, and they talk like, okay, they found benefits pretty immediately. And I'm not going to dispute what people say or think, but really how they work is they're sitting in the background. They are ready to spring into action, but they're also always working. So they're keeping us healthy just by eating and supplementing. And again, don't look for some immediate benefits. You have to be eating them or using them for, at least a month or so to really start getting the benefits. And one of the reasons why I'm always saying put them into your diet is because if you do that, I mean, eating mushrooms is just a great way to get the benefits of these beta-glucans. Now, if you feel like you need more, then I tell people, we'll definitely go ahead and supplement. But first off, put them into your diet, because that's just an excellent way of getting the benefits of these mushrooms and those beta-glucans. And what's interesting is the body of research around beta-glucans is so deep. And that's where they're really looking for ways that we can help to potentiate our immunity through this channel, which is a very natural channel. And that's what I love about it. It's a natural product. And that's what my business is based around. And that's what I think more people have to think about. What can we do in a regular way to help our body to react to these challenges that we have? And I look at illness all in kind of like the way they do in the East and in China, where we're talking balance here. We're all looking to find that balance point. And when we get out of balance, all of a sudden we can have an illness. So really, and that's part of what holistic medicine is teaching us, and that's just it's so much more of an Asian philosophy, and we're just starting to learn that in the West. In the West, the way medicine works, and in a lot of places, it's like you get ill, and it's like, okay, we have to give you something right away for that symptom.
Yes.
They don't look for the underlying causes. What's going on? What's your diet like? What's your lifestyle like? What is it that has brought this illness to you? So it's really a pretty complete philosophy of how we look at our health and and the illnesses. And I looked at them too as challenges. I don't look at this, some people are like, oh, I've got to fight this. And, it's like some kind of war or something. No. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
These challenges will always be there. That's just part of life. That's just the yin and yang. But we can, in fact, stay in balance with the proper diet, the proper lifestyle, and then also we can supplement if we need to.
I really truly love your passion for mushrooms and also your truly honest, transparent view on what mushrooms are good for. because it's really coming from you. It's so convincing, actually. And in Japan, so I think in the Western countries, you usually say, well, eat more vegetable. When we talk about food categories, then we talk about veggies and fruits. But in Japan, actually, when we talk about mushrooms and seaweeds, they are their own categories. So if health expert says, eat more vegetables and fruits, and they will add mushrooms and seaweeds as their own categories. So in Japan, mushrooms are truly appreciated as they have their own food category. And they are considered very healthy.
Yes, and that's what I love about Asia, whether it's Japan or China. You can go into your marketplaces and get maybe 12 different species of mushrooms, and they're just there as a regular part of what's available. And we're just starting to get there in North America, where, okay, in certain larger metropolises, you can go into like a Whole Foods or some other particular natural food store, and they will have maybe 6 different species. So we're in a way, we're catching up. and we're still a very young culture over here in North America, but in Europe they definitely love mushrooms as well, so they have a long history of mushrooms use too.
Sure.
But I think in Asia, that's where the appreciation of mushrooms really is strongest. And one of the things that's so interesting, Ava, is that, do you know that China produces 85% of the world's mushrooms?
I could imagine that. I think shitake actually, though, it's the biggest producer is still Japan, isn't it? Shitake is.
Well, you know what's interesting is in Japan, a lot of the mushroom growers have moved their production into China. Taiwan did the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why the Chinese production of mushrooms has grown so much, because it was maybe only 40 or 50%
I see.
20, 30 years ago. But the production of mushrooms in Japan sets the standard for so many places in the world, and it's such a beautiful image to see, like the traditional shiitake growing on the oak logs and in the forests. And no, it is very, very beautiful, and it's such a natural way to grow food. I just love it when I've seen it, and I haven't been able to go to Japan and visit the farms. I visit farms in China all the time, but it's just a thing of beauty. And listen, here's something that's really interesting.
Yes.
When I started on a very large mushroom farm in 1973, it's a very large agaricus mushroom farm. We grew 2 million pounds of mushrooms a year.
Wow.
We had probably over 100 people that were just involved in harvesting. We had a Japanese scientist there as director of research and development, Dr. Urayama, and he was growing shiitake mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, and enokitake mushrooms. So I got to see, while I was there learning about mushroom growing in agaricus, I got to see these other mushrooms being produced. And not only that, in the 1970s, I was eating fresh shiitake mushrooms.
That was unusual outside the Asia at that time, isn't it?
Oh, nobody else in North America had access to fresh shiitake mushrooms in the 1970s. And on that farm, we were the first farm to introduce fresh shiitake at scale into the local markets in the Seattle, Washington area. So I was so fortunate to have Dr. Urayama there, and he was a Japanese mushroom scientist and professor with many years, who somehow came to the US and got into the mushroom industry, and the owner of the farm was able to hire him as our director of research.
That is really an amazing story,
Yeah.
and it is amazing to hear that it happened. Those things were happening already so many years before, because I think that mushrooms have gained such a popularity among health enthusiasts outside Asia, maybe for the last 5-6 years, I think. But I could easily imagine, or could you imagine this current booming interest in mushrooms, let's say 20 years ago?
Well, it's very interesting because there were a number of people in a small group of us that did truly appreciate mushrooms, and a lot of these were wild mushroom hunters. And the way it's proceeded, it's one of those things, where it just very slowly, year by year, it's kind of like you think of a snowball that's rolling downhill. And as it rolls down, it gets bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, what is this? And I also kind of liken it to the way that mushrooms grow, because people will walk this same path, let's say every day. They walk out and they go through the park or something.
Mhm.
And one day they say, oh my goodness, look at that mushroom. Where did it come from? Well, the fact is that it finally reached a size where they noticed it,
Yes.
but it was there growing all the time for about 2 weeks, because there's kind of a mythology that a mushroom just grows up overnight.
Mhm.
No, it doesn't. Now, there are a few mushrooms in the tropics that grow very quickly, but
Mhm.
no, normally it takes weeks for that mushroom to start out as just a little tiny thing and then slowly get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then at some point on this path that you've been walking for the last couple of weeks, it's big enough and you go, oh my God, look at that mushroom. Where did it come from?
But it
So
was all under the ground all the time.
that's right. It was under the ground, and it was just going through the different stages of maturity to finally reach a point where you go, look at that. There it is. So that's kind of what has happened. All of a sudden, after many years of very slow, regular growth here in North America, it has finally just kind of reached what some people would call escape velocity. And now all of a sudden, everybody wants mushrooms, and there's articles being written all the time. And our customers put mushrooms into almost everything. You can't imagine. We have companies that are putting our mushroom extracts into chocolates. There are lots of companies putting the different extracts into beverages.
Mhm.
So the number of drinks now that have mushrooms in them, it is phenomenal. I just was talking to one of our customers this morning, and they sent me pictures and information about their product line. They've got 6 different beautiful looking beverages in these cans, and they're just one of many that are doing this. And think about the fact that so many beverages now are healthy compared to all of those carbonated sweet sodas out there. So I'm very encouraged about the way that mushrooms are being put into so many different venues, and it's really encouraging.
Yes, absolutely. And that's partially a big part thanks to companies or efforts like yours, right? Who were working all those years before this finally the mushroom boom, let's say, mushroom came out of the ground and became visible to the majority of the people.
Well, that is an interesting point too, because as you know, the body of this organism is underground or in a piece of wood. So we never see that. It's not like where we can see an apple tree and we can see the apple growing off the tree. We never see that mushroom tree, that what they call mycelium, which is the body, and it's underground, and it's there. It's one of nature's decomposers. So with fungi, with bacteria, with little bugs and all these other creatures, they are breaking down all of the organic matter that builds up every year and recycling that into humus for plants to reuse as nutrients. So it's there. We never see it. What we only see is when that mushroom pops up.
Yes, and you mentioned the word mycelium, which actually wasn't in my English vocabulary before, but I listened to your couple of interviews, and mycelium came up many times, so I looked it up, and even in my mother tongue Japanese, I was not 100% sure what it means, but it sounded like something very much fibrine, maybe like, and something based on spore. But I understand that. So as many companies appear who are now selling mushroom extracts, mushroom supplements in many different forms, and if they are using your company's, so Namex extracts, raw ingredients, that's perfectly great. But there are so many other companies as well, and I think as a consumer, it's very important to know how you can choose the best quality, high quality mushroom supplements. And I understand it's not all the mushroom supplements are made equal, right? And mycelium had a very, very big key role in this story. Could you maybe share how one can choose high quality mushroom supplements and distinguish bad ones from good ones?
Sure. And first off, just to explain a little bit about this organism that we call a mushroom. Mushrooms don't have seeds. So think about this for a second. If you're going like, okay, I want to grow mushrooms. How do you start? They don't have seeds. You can't get a mushroom seed and plant it, right? Mushrooms produce spores. Those spores are out in the air. The wind takes them and they land on the ground. They land on wood. The spores, when conditions are right, they will germinate into a very, very fine thread-like filament. And when multiple filaments fuse together, they will form a network. And this network we call mycelium. Now, mycelium is the body of this fungal organism. And as it grows and consumes what it's growing in and builds up some reserves of energy and nutrient when conditions are right. And here in the Pacific Northwest, that means the fall. In Japan, it would be the same in the fall. The temperature goes down, the humidity comes up, and up come the mushrooms. Now, they come up and they're being supported by this mycelium network that's underground, and that's feeding the growth of these mushrooms. So up comes the mushroom. The mushroom goes through a number of stages to reach maturity where the cap opens up. There's gills underneath the cap. That's where the spores are produced. Down come the spores. And now we have a completion of this life cycle. And in the supplement industry, you have to let people know what particular stage or part of this organism that you are selling, because that's very important. For example, when we want to consume ginseng, we want the root. Echinacea, we want the flower. Ginkgo, we want the leaf. So different parts, what we would call plant parts, are going to have different amounts of the active chemicals that we're looking for, these beneficial compounds. So with mushrooms, we can talk about three parts: the spore, the mycelium, and the mushroom. And the mushroom is what has been used traditionally in traditional Chinese medicine and in Japan and their traditional medical system for its benefits. And the mushroom is really the true sort of biofactory that produces most of the compounds we're interested in. Now, what has happened is that growing mushrooms is expensive. We can go out on in the marketplace, and we can buy fresh mushrooms, and the person growing them can make a profit and all. But if you're using mushrooms for supplement products are dried. They're not fresh. So we have to dry those mushrooms out. They're 90% water. And now we have to get 10 times more money. Instead of getting $5 a pound, we have to get $50 a pound for that same pound of mushrooms. So the economics are very difficult for anybody growing mushrooms to, in North America especially, to put them into the supplement market. So no mushrooms are grown in North America and made into a supplement. So what some companies do is they will grow this mycelium on sterilized grain. Sometimes it's rice, sometimes it's oats. They will grow it out, and then after 30 to 60 days, when it's fully covered the grain, they will harvest it, dry it out, grind it to a powder, grain and all. Now, are you familiar with the product called tempeh?
Yes, it's not Japanese, so I haven't eaten it, but I think it's a soy-based product and familiar name.
That's right. And how tempeh is made is they cook soybeans and then they inoculate it with a fungus. And so then you have white mycelium growing over the soy. And so when you're eating tempeh, you're actually eating mycelium. It's a food product. It's fine. But that tempeh, the amount of mycelium compared to the actual soy is probably 10 or 15%. And that's what's happening with companies in the United States. They will sterilize grain. They will grow mycelium on it. They will dry it, grind it to a powder. It's mostly grain starch. And yet what they do is they call it mushroom.
That's shocking.
It is shocking. And the way we know that is because we have a test that's a test for beta-glucans. And this test not only tests for beta-glucans, but it also tests for alpha-glucans, which are the starches. So in 2015, I did a study. I took 95 samples. I bought 40 of these products off the internet, these myceliated grain tempeh products. I had dried mushrooms. I had our mushroom extracts. We tested them all for the beta-glucans and the alpha-glucans, which are the starches. The dried mushrooms all had 25 to 60% beta-glucan and less than 5% alpha-glucan. Okay?
Yeah.
All of these myceliated grain tempeh products were just the opposite. They had about 5% beta-glucan and 30 to 60% alpha-glucan, the starches. So we were able to see this through our testing and demonstrate this. And I wrote a white paper on this. And Ava, that white paper literally changed the industry, because up to that point, nobody even knew that these companies were producing these types of products and selling them, mislabeling them as mushroom. Many of them, now, a few of them would put, if you turned it over, they would put maybe mycelium in the supplements facts panel, and maybe in the fine print, they would say myceliated oats or myceliated rice. But many companies that were selling those products never did. And everywhere it just said mushroom. So when people are buying them, they're looking at the front panel. it says reishi mushroom. It shows a picture of a reishi mushroom, and so people think they're buying a mushroom product. But
That's
if you even dump out the capsules or taste it, you taste it and it tastes just like flour because it's mostly the grain starch.
That's truly shocking. And as a consumer, I think it's right to be alarmed because because obviously your white paper had a great impact on the industry. Thanks to your great work. Like I think it's improving, but many companies are still selling their mycelium-based products as mushrooms, right? And that's a double shocking because first they are not getting the real mushrooms, and second, if they are trying to avoid grains, as many people might do for whatever reason, then they actually may be consuming grains unknowingly.
Well, exactly. I will attend a trade show in the United States, and it's called Paleo FX.
Yes,
And these are people that do not eat grains.
that's right.
And they see my booth there and they see mushrooms and they come up and say, oh, I love mushrooms. This is wonderful. And the first thing and they say, I take a mushroom product. And the first thing I say is, well, tell me the brand. And they tell me the brand. And I say, I'm sorry to say this, but most of what you're consuming is grain starch. And they are shocked.
They're absolutely freaking out. I could imagine.
Yeah, I mean, here they are. They're trying to be grain free, and not only that, they're taking a mushroom product, which they think should be a mushroom, and it's not. And look, the unfortunate part of this is that the FDA, for them, this is an issue, even if they're aware of it, that is like nobody's being harmed. Nobody's being helped, but nobody's being harmed. And so the FDA is much more interested in actually harmful products that are on the marketplace. And you know what's really interesting is the FDA actually has what's called a guidance document from 1976. And it says in this document, you cannot sell a product that is mushroom. You cannot sell mycelium and call it mushroom. These are two distinct, different parts. So it's got to be a mushroom product. If you're selling mushroom, it cannot be mycelium. They have this. It's a compliance document, FDA, but these companies do it anyway. And look, those products are so cheap to produce, and here it is, they're selling them. It's probably the most expensive starch anybody has ever purchased. And our message is getting out there. A lot more companies are realizing this. The customers that we have and the new people that come to us all the time say, I listened to you, or I read about your products, or I heard about it, and I heard about this whole issue of what we call myceliated grain, and we only want real, genuine mushrooms. And so even products now, they will say no mycelium, no starch, no grains. Right. So it is getting out there, but the market is expanding so quickly. Those products are still carrying and moving forward, and they are putting out so much information that is absolutely erroneous. And that's what, for me, I really do not like, because the misinformation is just terrible.
Yes, it is. It is so that's why I think you are doing such an important work, educating people, and I think it's really great for people to hear now from you that how to. So first step to choose or distinguish real mushroom products from non-real ones. Is just look at the bottle, and if it says mycelium or grain or anything, then run away. It's not a real mushroom.
That's right.
And
That's
are
right.
there any other telltale signs or anything else consumers should look for?
Well, if you're in the United States and you're looking at these products, if it says made or grown in the United States, you know it is not a mushroom. You know it is one of these grain-based mycelium products. And you know, I want to be clear too, because in 1989 I went to China, and I went to an international mushroom conference there, and all through the 90s I traveled through China, and I went to farms. I went to research institutions. I attended multiple different conferences and saw processors and looked at the farms and how they're growing the mushrooms and where they're growing the mushrooms, and made connections with people there who I've worked with now for 25 years. In 1997, because we started to purchase our mushrooms from China, because as a mushroom grower, commercial mushroom growing, I knew that was the only way we were going to be able to bring mushroom supplements to North America. In 1997, I went to China and I took the largest organic certifier with me, and we had the very first workshop, organic certification workshop for mushrooms in China, 1997.
Wow.
Because I've been certified organic since 1992. I totally believe in that. Every batch of extract that we make, before it even leaves China, it gets tested for pesticides, fungicides, heavy metals, microbial panel, and then once it arrives, we test it a second time. So we want to be absolutely sure it's chemical free, because, you know, a lot of people say, oh, China, it's got so much pollution and all this. Well, you know, I just say, well, all of that same pollution is in the United States. What do you think they're spraying on all of their food crops? Organic is only 5%. Everything else is chemical. So this happens everywhere. And the point is where you're growing it, how you're growing it. That's what's important. So we test everything, and I tell you, it's a beautiful thing. The way our mushrooms are grown is so natural and back up in the mountains. And I love going to these farms over there. It's not these, like over here in the United States, we grow like agaricus mushrooms in a very in big warehouses, and it's all climate controlled and all this. Over there, they're growing them in shade houses outdoors with fresh air and proper just light from the sun that gets through the shade. It is wonderful the way they're doing it over there. I just love the growers that work and are in our organic program. They're just such wonderful people. And you know, the other thing about it, Ava, is remember the fact of I'm over there and I'm meeting a lot of companies that have mushroom products, and they say, well, do you want to buy my mushroom extract? And I'm looking down at this and I'm like, huh, that's just a brown powder.
How do I know?
How do I know? So for us, we really love testing, and we have a number of tests that we use. We use the beta-glucan test. The beta-glucans have to be up. We know where it should be with every species. We know where it should be. We know where the alpha-glucan should be, less than 5. We know that. We know ergosterol is the fungal sterol. We analyze for that. And we analyze for another compound called ergothioneine. So we have a number of tests. We have a profile. And I've introduced this testing profile to the industry. And I said, here is the way that you can do quality control on your mushroom products. And you know what's so interesting is even the big Chinese companies that are producing mushroom products, they are using our testing methods as well, because they know Namex, and I've given talks to conferences in China. So they're looking to us. You know, that's one of the things that any developing country will do, it will look at, okay, who's the major producers here? It's just like Japan has set standards for mushrooms. So we're always looking at, okay, who's setting the standard? So they're adopting a lot of our standards, which is not to say that all of them are producing good products, because they sometimes will, like any company, will say, oh yeah, we're using the standard, but maybe they're not.
Right.
But that's what's happening, and that's also very gratifying for us.
Yeah, I truly appreciate that you are so rigorous about testing your extracts, because as you say, if it's just a brown liquid or brown powder, how do you know? And it's so important to know how much beta-glucan. I think maitake, for example, has quite a high level of beta-glucan.
It does. That's right.
Yeah, but if you don't measure, and if you are eating maitake, that's you can trust that you are taking
Yeah,
maitake
that's
in.
right.
But
That's right.
if it's a liquid or brown powder, again, you really have to test. That actually reminds me of a question I had. So in Japan today, still mushrooms are first and foremost edible mushrooms. We don't think mushrooms as supplements, I think, even today. So there are mushroom powders sold in, I just checked in Amazon in Japan. There are mushroom powders sold, but they are sold as food, basically. And people, when I read people's comments, like reviews, they are definitely cooking with them. They are just seeing it as a easy way because they don't have to chop. And so very
Sure.
few people are taking it as supplements, I think. And I couldn't really find, there are some exceptions. So reishi, for example, is not edible mushroom in Japan, or maybe it's not edible to begin with. So it's been introduced to Japan also as a supplement, I think, from the beginning. So nobody is eating reishi. So I see that even in countries outside Japan, you have mushroom supplement, which are just dried powdered mushrooms, I think, and the mushroom extracts, which I believe your company is specialized in. Is there any difference between them, or is one better than other from health benefits viewpoint?
Well, you know what? I think that when you're selling a supplement, extracting that herb or mushroom is important, because a couple things. For example, with supplements, when you've got just a dried mushroom and it's growing in nature and all, well, it will probably not meet the microbiological panel that you need to have for a supplement. You have to have below certain levels for bacteria and other fungi and E. coli and things like that. So one of the things about doing an extraction is that it does eliminate all of those other organisms, microorganisms that's in there. And I also think it also will help to break down fungi have hard cell walls. You grind it up and that breaks them down a lot, but doing a one-time, for example, water extraction helps to put them into a condition that I think is a little more bioavailable. Cooking with powders is great in terms of mushroom powders, and we though we don't sell just a straight mushroom powder as a supplement, we like to process it. We even have some extracts that are more concentrated, like they might be 4-to-1, they might be 8-to-1, meaning 8 kilos of dried mushrooms makes 1 kilo of extract powder. So you can think about that in a sense. Okay, so let's just say we have 100 grams of fresh mushrooms. We'll dry those out. Now we have 10 grams of dried mushrooms from that 100 grams of fresh. Let's say we do a 10-to-1 extract on it, so 10 kilos to 1 kilo. Now you've got 1 gram that actually represents 100 grams of fresh mushrooms.
Yeah, that's very potent.
Yeah, so we're concentrating it down, and in order for people to be able to take 1 or 2 capsules a day as a supplement, something like that. So that's where the extraction really comes in. And I think when you're talking about reishi, for example, well, it's a bitter mushroom.
Yes.
And not only that, it's like chewing on a piece of wood, right?
It's not a good tasting.
Yeah, so nobody's going to be eating that. So even in Japan, they have been producing reishi extract products for
Yes.
quite a while. I mean, some of the first reishi extracts that I saw over here in the in the 80s that actually were being made by Nissan Corporation.
Mhm.
And I always tell people too, Ava, that Japanese products are always high quality. Now, they might be expensive, but they're high quality products. I mean, all of the ones that I've encountered have been really good products. Yeah, and I can't say that about a lot of the Chinese products that get manufactured. Japanese products seem to be pretty good products. So reishi, you can either create a tea with it and drink it as a tea. That would be sort of a natural way to do it. Or they do have reishi extracts in Japan. And then the other thing that they've done in Japan is companies have developed certain mushroom products where they've extracted them with a very specific type of process.
Mm.
One of those is a product called PSK,
Mhm.
which is polysaccharide crestin, and that's actually used as a adjuvant for cancer treatment, for standard cancer treatment in Japan. You take it to help with your immunity while you're going through that. So
Mhm.
it is actually even considered a drug product.
It's a drug made out
Yes,
of mushrooms.
that's right. That's right. And even they even produced a drug from shiitake called Lentinene, and
Mhm.
that was a purified beta-glucan.
Mhm.
So they've been working with mushrooms, and there are other products that, for example, I think there's an Agaricus blazei mushroom that they've turned into a type of health product in Japan as well. And there's another one called, I think, AHCC. But they tend to be really kind of specialized types of products. You don't see them, I'm assuming, in the same way, the way you're talking, where you look on the supplement shelf and you see 10 different maitake products and 10 different, nothing
Yes.
like that.
Mm.
It's a very specialized type of process to make those products. And I find it all really interesting and good. And again, like I say, they're always these specialized extracts that they make in Japan. They're always really high quality products. They are very expensive, however. So, like, there's a maitake extract called diffraction,
Mhm.
and it was developed in Japan by a Japanese scientist,
Mhm.
and it's being sold over here. But if you want to purchase it, even wholesale, you're talking about $600-700 a kilogram. It is
Wow.
really, really expensive. So it's not something that can go in a lot of supplement products.
Yes, actually, the price is it's humbling to hear that the quality of mushroom products coming from Japan are generally high quality. But I do agree with the pricing because so as a Japanese person living outside Japan but wanting to get high quality mushroom products. If I can get products sent from Japan, but they are usually actually much higher priced, and that's why I actually started looking some other option, and your company came across as the best, really truly best option. So I truly appreciate that you're making not only high quality but best, really good priced, so consumer friendly in that way as well. Because that's of course important if you want to keep taking mushroom
Oh,
for a long
yes.
time.
No, that
Um,
absolutely is. A lot of those expensive products actually get given away as gifts because people can't afford to use them.
Absolutely. About so in Japan, when I was looking at those mushroom powder products, people seems to ask question: are those mushrooms harvested from real wood? So it was shitake powder, I think, or was they grown in a greenhouse, like inside the environment? Does it make any difference in which so if it's an artificial environment like greenhouse inside, not on the wood, or if a mushroom is grown on its nature wood log from nutritional profile viewpoint?
Well, you know what? I think the highest quality shiitake comes from the oak wood log in the
Mhm.
traditional way. And in Japan, they have different qualities of those mushrooms too, and they feel that the ones that are grown lower temperatures in the colder time of year, like maybe in the fall, are higher quality because they grow slower.
Mm.
So the flesh of those is much tighter and it's a much denser flesh. And this is absolutely true. We get shiitake mushrooms that are grown over here. They're all grown in greenhouses at higher temperatures, and the density of the flesh is really low, and the flavor is very mild compared to a shiitake that's grown in a longer to let it develop and at cooler temperatures. But over here they're just trying to pump them out as fast as they can, and most people don't understand. And this is something that I learned back in the 70s from Dr. Urayama about the qualities of shiitake and how they're grown. And so that's very important. And I do think too that the nutrition in that log will give you a little bit better profile of the nutrients, because that log is very nutrient dense compared to, let's say, normally when you're growing in greenhouses and let's just say on synthetic substrates, you're growing on sawdust, and you add some nutrients to the sawdust. I mean, it's still a good substrate for growing mushrooms, but when you're talking about, let's just say, this type of quality, I don't think it's going to affect the beta-glucans so much, but in terms of some of the other, maybe some of the micronutrients, and maybe just certainly the flesh and the flavor, really night and day.
Yeah, and actually in the Japanese language, we have a specific word for the thick shiitake. That's called separate, like it's called donko, and that means
Donko, exactly.
donko. Yeah,
Yes.
and they are
Yes.
very much appreciated at a higher price, and have a very
Absolutely.
much better aroma. So it's more fragrant, and it's usually used as dried shiitake and for making
That's
broth.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And actually those donkos will oftentimes have a bit of a cracked cap too from the
Yes.
drying process, and the fact that they've been growing in these cooler temperatures. And it's funny because Chinese growers of shiitake did their very best to be producing the donko style. And most of the reason for that is because a large portion of the shiitake that's being produced in China goes right to Japan.
Yeah, I could imagine that Japan is a huge consumer of shiitake. Really,
Yes,
we
yes,
eat
yes.
a lot. Um, I think that given your long time expertise in the mushroom business, and given the current booming market for mushroom supplements, where do you see the future direction of mushroom industry or mushroom supplement industry is going? Let's say in 5 or 10 years, or maybe it's your vision as well. But what would you expect from the industry in 5 or 10 years?
Well, the industry is so big in Asia. And if we look at that, not only just the consumption of fresh mushrooms, but also the consumption of mushrooms as medicine, let's say, or in the supplement space, this industry in North America is just got so much room to grow. And it's really interesting to me too, Ava, that there are so many innovative new companies producing very different types of products, whether it's beverages or whether it's the mushroom chocolates or whether some other type of food product. I mean, I just look out there at the food market and all of the different ways that companies have been incorporating our extracts into different foods. That alone, I'm just so encouraged about that. And I just think as mushrooms become more recognized for their food value, people are going to start to look at them in a much different way. And I even know a woman who is a natural products practitioner, and she's created her own food pyramid. And she's got mushrooms right up in the
That's
heart
nice.
of that pyramid. And that's why I say mushrooms have been the forgotten food.
Mm,
And again, I really consider them the missing dietary link. And
yeah.
so I just think there's no limit right now to where we can go with this.
I cannot agree more. And it sounds very exciting next 5 or 10 years, of course, for Namex and the real mushrooms as well. Do you have any exciting future plans for your companies? Maybe you would like to share with the audiences if something is on the pipeline or anything you would like to share?
Absolutely. Yes, one of the really cool things about mushrooms is that they have this sterol called ergosterol, and it's very similar to our cholesterol.
Mm.
And when the ergosterol is exposed to UV light, it turns into vitamin D2. So we are starting to manufacture, we're just in the final stages of our research and development on this. We're going to produce a lot of mushroom extracts that are high in vitamin D.
Mm.
And I'm sure you've read a lot about vitamin D, especially lately. And I have read a lot about vitamin D. And I just think it's something everybody needs to be taking much more vitamin D than they already are. And if you can get it from a natural source, I mean, vitamin D3 is produced from lanolin of sheep, and it's quite a process to actually refine it and get it out. With the mushroom vitamin D, it's just the mushroom powder that has been exposed to UV light. That's all. I just am so excited about this process, and just to think that we can be supplying vitamin D from a natural source like that. That's something for me that right now is really exciting. And Real Mushrooms, we've actually got a vitamin D2 product in the Real Mushrooms line, but we're going to be able to offer this to our wholesale customers in bulk soon. And to me, I'm just like, this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds really. I really agree with the importance of vitamin D, especially now, and I think people are learning much more about how important this this very commonly discussed, but maybe a little bit forgotten vitamin. It's truly important. And as someone living in Northern Europe, there is no chance for me to get sun during winter, which is very long
That's
here.
exactly right. For those of us in the northern climates, it's so important. And they have shown, especially during this COVID time, that many people who have gotten seriously ill have very low levels of vitamin D.
Yep.
And that's very significant. And I just think in general, with all of the research that I've looked at, vitamin D is super important, and we should all be taking a reasonably high amount of that on a daily basis.
Yes, thank you so much for looking into a natural way of increasing our vitamin D intake, and I truly look forward to progress in that area at your company. And lastly, if people would like to learn more about your companies, where would you turn people to? Is it your websites, namex.com and realmushrooms.com, or any other places where you would like to lead people to?
Well, if they could come to either one of those websites, we have a lot of really great educational material there. And I've also got some really interesting slideshows about how we grow our mushrooms, a little more about the whole mycelium on grain issue, how that's produced. So you get some really good visuals about it. But please come to the website, and again, there's some really good content there that will explain a lot of this and give you a lot more information.
I truly appreciate your emphasizing education and educating people. And I myself, even though mushroom has been, especially shiitake, so natural part of my life for my entire life, I have learned so much through talking to you today, as well as preparing for this interview. So thank you so much again, and it's been a true pleasure having you here today.
Ava, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure for me to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Kenko Hacks, a podcast about wellness, health, and biohacking.